Dawson Rider review.
Hey YouTube, Dawson Rider here. Welcome to my review for the Power Rangers Lightning Collection Green Dino Charge Ranger. This is part of Wave 10, and I am doing these reviews separately because they are shipping to me separate rather than waiting forever to get all of them together, making the review irrelevant. But let's go ahead and start talking about the basics just to get it out of the way. As far as accessories go, you have 4 different hands on them. The ones you have on them right now, which is just holding the weapon, and then you have this sort of unique pointed hand here. You got the other 2 hands, which is a closed fist, and then the other holding weapons hands for the opposite hand. You have your par for the course lightning collection effect. You have the Dino Charge Morpher, which is lacking a little bit in some paint, but it looks fine. And of course, you have the human head sculpt, which I think actually looks decently accurate. He looks a little mad. I'm not sure what he's mad about. I guess Michael's biggest regret, which was being in Dino Charge. But he looks a little mad, but I think is actually one of these stronger, more accurate head sculpts. And obviously you have the saber on him, which is kind of the same as the gun, where it's got like the base level paint, but it seems lacking a little bit. As far as other par for the course stuff, our articulation here, you have a nice ball joint on the leg, swiveling joint right here. You have a double knee joint right here. You have a hinge joint on the foot. You have a hinge joint on the waist, and then a ball joint at the chest up here. Nice ball joint and hinge here at the arm. Double elbow joint, swiveling at the fist. And then a nice ball joint on the head for all-around movement. Although you can't move his head down very much with this one, I think it's really noticeable. But other than that, par for the course stuff. And on mine personally, I don't have any loose joint problems, which is nice. Now let's talk about the pros and cons of this guy before we dig into the comparisons. And overall, I think this is a solid figure. Like pros, it's a good-looking figure. That'll be it for my review. That was very well articulated. Until next time, no, I'm just kidding. But I think the paint looks good. The color for me looks decently accurate, maybe a little bit darker than sometimes in the show, but overall I think it's a good looking figure. I fortunately didn't have too many noticeable QC issues. I think it nails all the detail it needs to. Everything looks really good for that purpose. I think the helmet sculpt is really accurate, and I think it's really well rounded. Something I'll note with the figure art is it's a little bit too skinny, so I think it's a really accurate head sculpt. The colors pop here like this. This matches the Red Ranger one, which is something I'll get to in a second. But I just overall think it's a very solid figure. You know, good articulation, no loose joint problems with this one. Looks good. Nothing too huge to complain. Like, I'm going to have some stuff that I compare and contrast and talk about, you know, the pros and cons of this in the figure art. But for the most part, it's just a fine figure. Nothing that I'm like, oh my god, you guys need to own this, but nothing that I'm like, oh, this is kind of a disgrace. I don't think I've ever said anything like that. But let me go ahead and compare it to the past versions, and then we can dig into some more of the pros and cons. Okay, so here we have the figure art from Kyoryuger. Obviously, this is the Legacy one. No, I'm just kidding. It's the Lightning one that's been here this whole time. And then this is the Action Hero release from Bandai. As per usual, the sort of basic figure from the Bandai days isn't really that comparable. Honestly, I didn't mind the action figure ones though. These are all action figures, but the Action Hero ones, they were fine for what they are. No problem with them, but obviously this is going to be the superior pick. Your main consideration is probably going to be between the Lightning and the figure art, and if you watch my previous reviews, you know that I'm heavily critical of the figure arts for how they hold up for the price. I think that they're too skinny and cheap feeling for, you know, a figure you're spending $60+ on, and I still stand by that. However, that being said, I think the Kyoryuger ones hold up in terms of not feeling cheap compared to some of the other ones, and I think this one is one of the ones that holds up better in terms of overall sculpt. I still think they're too skinny, but Green did lean a little bit more towards skinny in the Japanese footage, so I would say if there was a perfect body type, it would actually be between these two. He's a little bit too skinny, but he's maybe a little bit too bulky, but it's not a huge deal. Like, it's something I'm noticing for the review, but it's nothing that's going to make me pick one over the other or be disappointed. It's like, honestly, a really minuscule nitpick. The only area where I think it really makes a difference is the helmet. The helmet is too skinny, and that's my main complaint with the figure arts, is setting aside the body type, is the skinniness will make the helmets more narrow than they need to be, and so setting aside the body, I think this is much more accurate to the proportions of the helmet. But this one isn't bad overall. Obviously, you're going to have a little bit better details with it, and you're going to have much better detailed weapons and stuff like that. As far as any other cons I have for this guy, I would say that I wish the weapons were a little bit better painted. I don't need them to have every single detail, but it's the fact that it's even missing the little eye that makes it seem like a cheaper looking weapon compared to other accessories in other Lightning Collection figures. And also, this isn't necessarily a con for this guy specifically, but his belt here, it does match the Red Ranger release for Dino Charge, but it does not match Black's, which that's more Chase's fault than anything else. So much for being a hotshot, and that's kind of actually more Hasbro's fault than anything else. It's not something that's going to make me freak out, but it does suck to have those little consistencies. So if you have the 3 Dino Charge figures that are released so far, you're going to have some differences in the belt, because I think that the Chase's is like a black dino symbol with a silver background or something. The point is, it doesn't match. That's not necessarily Green's fault, but it's kind of a fault overall with the figures matching up. But overall, final verdict, I would say this is a solid figure release. Again, there's some nitpicks here and there about the proportions, but it's nothing life-changing, and I think if you like this suit and character, you'll be happy with this. I think it's an overall solid release. That's about it for this one, though, guys. Until next time, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and climb the steps and ring that bell so you get notifications for my videos. Dawson Ryder, signing out.